1. Ketanji Brown Jackson on democracy: what keeps the Supreme Court justice up at night? 2. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's concerns for U.S. democracy, a deep dive. 3. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the leading dissenter. 4. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, a voice on the Supreme Court. 1. Ketanji Brown Jackson on democracy: what keeps the Supreme Court justice up at night? Imagine lying awake at night, haunted by the thought of a crumbling democracy. This is the stark reality for Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who recently revealed that the state of our democracy is what keeps her up at night. But here's where it gets controversial. Her concerns are not just about the abstract concept of democracy, but about the very real and tangible threats it faces in our country today. During a Q&A session at the Indianapolis Bar Association, moderator and U.S. District Judge Jane Magnus-Stinson asked Jackson what weighs heavily on her mind, and her response was met with applause from the crowd. Jackson's reply, as reported by the New York Times, was a call to action, urging people to focus on and invest in the well-being of our country and its government. As someone who has been vocal about her concerns, Jackson has issued a series of pointed dissents over the court's previous term, criticizing her conservative colleagues on rulings related to executive power, immigrant rights, and more. Her sharply worded opinions have not gone unnoticed, and at times, have been met with rebukes from her fellow justices. For instance, in the case of Trump v. Casey, Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote that Jackson's dissent was unmoored from any doctrine whatsoever. Jackson's response was no less pointed, as she expressed her deep disillusionment with the court's decision, warning that it would hasten the downfall of our governing institutions. But Jackson is not alone in her concerns. A recent NPR poll found that a staggering 76% of Americans believe that democracy is under threat. This raises a critical question: what can we do to address these concerns and ensure the health of our democracy? And this is the part most people miss: the fact that democracy is not just a concept, but a living, breathing system that requires our active participation and engagement. As we consider the state of our democracy, we must ask ourselves, what role can we play in protecting and preserving it? Do we agree with Justice Jackson's assessment, or do we see the threats to democracy differently? We invite you to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. One thing is certain: the future of our democracy depends on our collective ability to engage with these complex issues and work towards a more just and equitable society. So, let's keep the conversation going and explore the ways in which we can come together to build a stronger, more resilient democracy. 2. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's concerns for U.S. democracy, a deep dive. The future of American democracy is keeping Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson awake at night, and she's not shy about saying it. This concern has been a recurring theme in her recent public speeches and passionate dissenting opinions, highlighting a deep unease about the direction the country's government is heading. But here's where it gets controversial. Jackson is openly warning that the very foundations of the rule of law are under threat, a claim that has sparked intense debate among legal experts and the public alike. During a live-streamed conversation with U.S. District Judge Jane Magnus-Stinson at an event hosted by the Indianapolis Bar Association, Jackson expressed her urgent desire for Americans to pay closer attention to what's unfolding in the nation's political and judicial arenas. "I'm really very interested to get people to focus, and to invest and to pay attention to what is happening in our country and in our government," she said, though she didn't go into further detail at that moment. As the first black woman to serve on the Supreme Court and its most junior member, Jackson's voice carries significant weight. Over the past 2 Supreme Court terms, the conservative majority has made sweeping decisions that have notably expanded presidential powers. These rulings have granted former President Donald Trump and other presidents broad immunity for actions taken while in office, limited the ability of lower courts to issue nationwide injunctions that block policies, and allowed many of Trump's unprecedented executive orders to stand temporarily, even as legal challenges continue to work their way through the courts. Jackson has emerged as one of the court's most vocal critics, writing more dissenting opinions than any other justice in the recent term. She has strongly condemned several rulings that she believes undermine democratic principles and the balance of power. At a separate event in New Orleans on Saturday, Jackson described the conservative bloc's decisions as an existential threat to the rule of law. This is a bold and provocative statement that challenges the legitimacy of the court's current direction. She reiterated this stance in a dissent issued on June 27, opposing the majority's decision to curtail the power of lower courts to issue nationwide injunctions, a tool that has been crucial in blocking many of Trump's policies. Jackson warned that the majority's ruling is profoundly dangerous, arguing that it effectively permits the executive branch to wield unchecked and arbitrary power, precisely the kind of authority the Founding Fathers designed the Constitution to prevent. This perspective raises important questions about the balance of power and the safeguards meant to protect democracy. Her outspoken critiques have not gone unanswered. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, writing for the majority in that case, dismissed Jackson's arguments as inconsistent with over 2 centuries of legal precedent and the Constitution itself. This clash highlights the deep ideological divides within the court and the broader debate over constitutional interpretation. Despite the weighty topics, Jackson's Thursday discussion also offered a glimpse into her personal side. She shared that her favorite song is Cheryl Lynn's "Got to Be Real," enjoys watching the reality show Survivor, and has a fondness for fried chicken, details that humanize a figure often seen only through the lens of her judicial role. When asked how she decides to write a dissenting opinion, Jackson explained that it's about having something meaningful to contribute and not being afraid to speak up. She emphasized her resilience, noting she has a thick skin and isn't bothered when other justices disagree with her views. The conversation also touched on an intriguing aspect of her judicial approach. Although she is considered a liberal justice, Jackson sometimes finds common ground with conservative Justice Neil M. Gorsuch. "You end up aligning with different justices at different times because cases vary," she said. "Sometimes you'll find someone you wouldn't normally be aligned with who thinks about this issue the same way that you do." This nuance challenges the simplistic liberal versus conservative narrative often applied to the court. With 6 conservative justices and 3 liberals, Jackson acknowledged the reality of often being in the minority. When Magnus Stinson pointed this out, Jackson humorously interrupted with a sarcastic "sometimes," eliciting laughter and showing her ability to maintain perspective amid challenging circumstances. One of the surprises Jackson shared about her time on the court was how formal and traditional the environment is. Contrary to what some might imagine, justices don't relax their demeanor during private conferences. The court maintains a strict decorum that underscores the seriousness of their work. In sum, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's candid reflections reveal a deep concern for the health of American democracy and the rule of law. Her willingness to speak out, even when it invites controversy, invites us all to consider: are the recent shifts in judicial power protecting the Constitution, or are they steering the country toward a more precarious future? What do you think? Do you agree with Justice Jackson's warnings, or do you see the court's actions as a necessary evolution? Share your thoughts below and join the conversation. 3. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the leading dissenter. Imagine a Supreme Court where the rule of law is under siege, and the very foundations of our democracy are being eroded. This is the stark reality we are facing today, and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is sounding the alarm. As the court's junior-most justice, she's emerging as a powerful voice of dissent in an era dominated by President Donald Trump's influence. But here's where it gets controversial. Jackson's unflinching critiques of the court's decisions are not only challenging the status quo but also sparking a necessary conversation about the role of the judiciary in our society. And this is the part most people miss. Her dissents are not just about disagreeing with the majority, they're about holding the court accountable for its actions and ensuring that the rights of all citizens are protected. Take, for instance, the recent decision allowing the White House to move forward with plans to dramatically reduce the size of the federal government. Jackson penned a scathing solo dissent, arguing that the court's decision was truly unfortunate and hubristic. She pulled no punches, stating that the court was releasing the president's wrecking ball without proper scrutiny or caution. But what's truly remarkable about Jackson's dissent is her willingness to speak truth to power and challenge the court's handling of Trump's policies. As she wrote, "Today, the court exercises neither caution nor scrutiny, and once again leaves the people paying the price for its reckless emergency docket determinations. This is not just a matter of legal interpretation, it's about the very real consequences of the court's actions on the lives of ordinary citizens." And Jackson is not alone in her concerns. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, the senior liberal on the court, nodded to Jackson's concerns about restructuring federal agencies, but ultimately agreed with the decision. However, Jackson's dissent highlights a deeper issue: the court's tendency to prioritize the interests of the executive branch over those of Congress and the people. As she wrote, "The majority permits the immediate and potentially devastating aggrandizement of one branch, the executive, at the expense of another, Congress." This is a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked executive power and the erosion of our system of checks and balances. But here's the question: are we paying attention to the warning signs? Are we recognizing the gravity of the situation and the importance of the judiciary in protecting our democracy? Jackson's dissents are not just about disagreeing with the majority, they're about sounding the alarm and prompting a national conversation about the role of the court in our society. And this is where it gets really interesting. Jackson's emergence as a leading dissenter is not just about her, it's about the future of the court and the direction of our country. As the second most productive writer on the court, behind only conservative Justice Clarence Thomas, Jackson is making her mark and challenging the status quo. Her writings have drawn attention and sparked controversy, but they're also prompting a necessary conversation about the court's role in our democracy. So, what do you think? Are Justice Jackson's dissents a necessary check on the court's power, or are they a sign of a more divisive and polarized judiciary? Do you agree with her critiques of the court's handling of Trump's policies, or do you think she's overstepping her bounds? Let's discuss. 4. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, a voice on the Supreme Court. Passion, principle, and bold expression. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissents on the Supreme Court are stirring a national conversation about what it truly means to speak one's mind at the highest level of American judiciary. Her readiness to openly share her perspectives through powerful, sometimes fiery, written dissents has set her apart, and not everyone agrees with her approach. Are strong, personal opinions an asset or a liability in our nation's top court? That's the debate, and Jackson isn't backing down. During a recent gathering in Louisiana, Jackson sat down with ABC News as part of her book tour for Lovely One at the Essence Festival of Culture. Reflecting with candor, she admitted, "I feel privileged to have this remarkable platform to express my genuine feelings on the tough issues we face. That's what my opinions are really about." For those wondering whether Supreme Court justices simply interpret the law or bring their personal insights into the mix, here's where it gets controversial. Appointed by President Joe Biden, Justice Jackson, despite being the least senior member of the court, has made significant waves. She isn't shy about voicing her views, often penning her own dissenting opinions in headline-making cases, even when she's not the primary dissenter. For example, in a recent case involving the legality of universal injunctions issued by judges, Jackson authored a separate opinion, emphasizing what she saw as a significant threat to the rule of law if the executive branch could violate constitutional rights with impunity. "I write separately to underscore a crucial issue, the court's ruling allowing the executive to sidestep the Constitution for anyone who hasn't yet filed a lawsuit undermines the foundation of the law itself," she insisted. And this is the part most people miss: her critiques don't always go unchallenged. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, writing for the majority, pushed back hard, asserting that Jackson's stance conflicted with over 2 centuries of court tradition and constitutional interpretation. Barrett went so far as to say Jackson's argument wasn't even worthy of extended discussion, highlighting a profound divide within the court. Interestingly, even among ideological allies, sharp disagreements have surfaced. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, typically aligned with Jackson, notably parted ways with her in an emergency decision that allowed then-President Donald Trump's wide-ranging federal job reductions to proceed. Such splits raise a provocative question: does unity or diversity of opinion best serve the court and the nation? Yet, behind the bench, Jackson reveals a different side. She described the collegial traditions among the justices, such as the obligatory handshake before court sessions and regular group lunches. At lunch, we have a rule not to discuss cases. It's an opportunity to talk about our families, books, sports, or movies. We get to see each other as people, not just legal minds, Jackson explained. This detail humanizes the justices, reminding us that they are more than their judicial philosophies. Jackson, a Harvard Law graduate and former federal judge, is also known for her active participation during oral arguments. In fact, according to analyses by the Empirical Scoters blog, she spoke up more than any other justice in the 2022 and 2023 terms. It's amusing how much attention people give to how vocal I am during arguments, she said, reflecting on the adjustment from being a trial judge, where she ran the courtroom, to sharing the floor with her colleagues. It's been a challenge to make sure everyone has a chance to speak, but I've genuinely enjoyed it. And this is where the controversy circles back: should justices like Jackson use their public role to advocate passionately and personally, or should impartiality and restraint be the guiding lights on the bench? Some see her forthright style as refreshing candor, others argue it risks undermining the perceived neutrality of the court. So, what do you think? Is Justice Jackson's outspoken approach a breath of fresh air in a system often shrouded in tradition and formality, or does it challenge the very integrity of the Supreme Court? Does robust debate strengthen the court, or threaten its authority? Let's hear your thoughts. Do you agree, or do you see it differently?